So this morning we've got a Honda BF100 VTEC and we're going to carry out a service on it. This is quite a new engine. It's the one with the serial number. It starts BBMJ. This is a 1112766 and it weighs between 166 and 172 kilos. It's the BF100A. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the oil change, and that's done by removing that drain plug there on the side there. We'll drain that into a tub, and then in the block we have an oil filter which we'll change as well, and then refill with engine oil. So the plug's held on with a 12mm socket. We'll remove that, and to remove the cowling, I've got two latches here, front and back. Now it's a case of just lifting the engine cowling straight off to reveal the power head. And on the left hand side of the engine we have the fuel filter there. Sorry, not the fuel filter, the oil filter. So we'll go ahead now and remove that plug. And there is a washer behind there as well. So there we go, there's the oil coming out. There's the oil coming out. You can see it's quite clean. Not had much use. That's the plug there, which we'll clean up, and we'll put a new crush washer on there. So we'll go ahead and we'll just let that drain out, and then we'll remove the oil filter as well. So that's the last of the oil drain out there. I mean, I could have held the pan just here, but there is quite a lot of it, so I'm just letting it drain out into the tray there. I've got some rags down, some towels for any spills. So as that's draining out, we'll go ahead and we'll remove the washer on there. We've got a new one, clean the plug up, and once the oil's drained out, we'll refit it. There you go, there's the sump plug and the new washer. It's a case of just slipping it over the top there, and that's good to reinstall. So just start with the plug off there with the new washer, and it's just a case of tightening that up, and then we can remove the filter and refill with oil. So we'll just nip that up, and then that's the drain complete. So that's where you do it from the right hand side, just there. So for removing the oil filter, it's just here on the left hand side. I'm going to put a rag under it, just for when it's removed, just to catch the oil. It won't be that much, but it saves cleaning it up later, so we'll just put that under there. Now we've got a tool, which is common to most outboard engine oil filters, that just slips over the top there, and then we can wind the filter off. There you go. Just like taking a bolt out. Pick it up on end. It's got the new oil filter, genuine Honda filter. I'm just going to take some of that engine oil and just put it on the seal there to stop it binding. We've cleaned the face up best we can. Then we're just going to offer it up onto the thread. Move the rag out of the way a little bit for clearance, and then we're going to do it, tighten it up by hand until it's snug. We're not putting it on with mechanical means, as we could damage the thread if it goes on cross-threaded. So we'll just wind that up. There is enough clearance to get your hand on to get it nipped up, and then another tip is we'll put the date on, today's date, to show when it was last done. And that's it for fitting an oil filter. These go on dry, you don't pre-fill them or anything like that, you just put a bit of oil on the seal and you're good to go. So now we will fit or pour some more oil in, some fresh oil. So we're going to add the new engine oil to this, and around the back here gives us the spec. It's 10W30 and it holds 4.2 litres. Here's the filler. So we'll remove that and we shall measure out the oil and we'll pour it in. Then around this side we have the dipstick to check the level. So here we are, I'm just putting the final litre of oil in there. Just goes in the top there. Just go nice and slow. Also you can use a funnel, but I haven't got one with me today, but any sort of jug. The hole's quite big to put the oil in. Let's say this is 10W30, it's 4.2 litres. And then we'll check it on the dipstick. Alright, so that's the engine oil put in, and then we're just going to check it on the dipstick here. So we'll just pull it out. We'll see we're on the mark there. Obviously we're going to do a test run of the engine when we're finished. We'll have to put a bit more in because it'll go around the oil filter. Not too much, but it might need a top up, so it's always good to double check after 5 minutes of running, after you've done an oil change, just to make sure you've got the right amount of oil in it. So the high pressure fuel filter is in this housing here, held on with 3 screws. We'll remove those 3 screws, and there's a spring in that recess there holding the high pressure filter in, and we'll take the 3 screws off and remove it and change it with a new one. So there's the part number for it, 16911ZY3010. So we'll just remove the 3 screws retaining it. Just remembering it is spring loaded. So just take the last one out there and reveal the filter in the housing. So there is a spring there. There's the filter. It only goes in one way. I'll just get the new filter here. Let's say there's a recess there for the spring. Ordinarily you'd change these O-rings. I don't know why the O-rings don't come in the kit. Obviously there must be a separate order. And then you've got a little rubber bush there that pushes into the new part. Filter housing marked T for top. And now it's just a case of putting the 3 screws back on. No particular order, we'll just do them lightly first, just so it seats, and then we'll go around and nip them right up. So this is the high pressure fuel filter. There we go. That's that done. The one up here is like the low pressure one, and then the other one, it's not really a filter, that's the water separator, or the alarm. So that's the fuel system now done. Just add a correction, I said it didn't come with an O-ring. It actually does come with an O-ring. Just got it there in that bag. It was under another part in the kit, so I thought I didn't have one, but we have got one. So we'll pick this out and put the new O-ring on. It's obviously always good to change O-rings, because when you've got a flat face like that, it does crush the O-ring, and over time it does wear down to the point where you have no sealing effect. So it's always good to change O-rings. Let's say I didn't think this one came with one, but it does. So there you go, you can't really tell, but that's the new O-ring fitted. And there's the old one there, just pulled it out. So now I'll put the plate back on. So the next part of our service is we're going to do the fuel filter here. Now this is quite an easy one, it's just 2 hoses with spring clips, and it's held in a rubber holder there. remove these, note the direction of the flow on the top there. So obviously the right hose has to go on, you can't flip this round, there's a direction of travel for the fuel. And then we'll fit the new one, which is in that bag, genuine Honda part again. Quite an easy one, anyone can do this. You literally need probably one tool just to open up the spring clips, some pliers or something like that. We'll do that now. So I've just put the camera on top of the engine there. We'll see if we can just open up these spring clips here, just enough to pull it back off the hose. There we go, that's that one. So you just grab them in like a twisting motion, draw them back just enough. We should be able to just either, depending on how long they've been on for, just twist these hoses off. Looks like they might need a little bit of manipulation to get them off. Just move them around a little bit. Don't really want to use the pliers, but just enough to break the grip. There we go, and we can just slide them back off. It is amazing how much grip these hoses have. There we go. So those are the hoses off. Like I say, remember there's a direction of the fuel, so the fuel comes in and out. And we should be able to get this out. It is in a rubber bracket. It should go in a lot easier than it comes out. There we go. So that's it out there. Now we've got the new one, just remembering the direction of the fuel flow. It's just a case of sliding it back in. And aligning it with the hoses, which just push straight back on. Push them as far as you can down on each one. And then we can refit the spring clips. There we go. So I hope you were able to see that, what I was doing. Very straightforward, a little bit fiddly, but some pliers or a little tool to open up the spring, and that's it. Sits straight in there. Now there is another fuel filter on there, and we'll do that next. So there's another little thing to service on here, and that's the water fuel separator alarm sensor. All right, got that on there, and that comes off on that bracket. There's nothing else in there, no filter or anything, just a float switch. It's held on a little rubber bracket just there, and you can pull it off. If they haven't been off in a while, they do stick a little bit, but this one's got the water sensor in as well, so just a case of a firm pull and you can get it off. Just being careful, let's reorientate the camera, that there is a cable on the bottom, so don't go pulling it out. We'll slide this rubber bit off, and then there's a retaining plate with three screws that hold it on. So I've got it off its holder, which is just the same as the other filter, that little rubber mount there. And you can see there the cable that's in the bottom, so it's sitting like that. Now I've started to slacken off. There's 1, 2, 3 screws. Now that holds up that metal plate on, which holds the bowl. So I've started to slacken them off. We'll take all 3 out, and we should be able to slide the collar enough to drop this bowl on the bottom. So we'll just take all 3 out. We should be able to just pop that out. We've got a big O-ring, the top cap, which we'll put in there. So that's it taken apart now. There is no filter in this. This is the fuel sensor. So when you get water in with your fuel, it lifts. There's a little float inside because of the difference in the density. It lifts and the alarm goes off. Pretty simple. Gives you an indication to having water in your fuel. So that's how you would empty it. if needs be. You can see there the little black float there. Obviously refitting is the same. If you were doing this as a for any reason, obviously change the O-ring on there. This is just a demonstration to show you how to empty it. So then put the top collar, put this white piece back in, sits in there, and then just refit it, and then the 3 screws go in and then back into the holder. So here we are on the reinstallation here. There's not really an orientation for these screws, they're just all 3 are the same, so we'll just start each one off. And that's the fuel water sensor drained. So there we go, that's that water sensor back on. A little bit fiddly job that, but that's how you empty it. Okay, so we're going to do the spark plugs now on this Honda 100A 4-stroke. It's the these are your spark plug or coils, sort of coil on plugs, and they've given us this really nifty little bit that we can take out with an 8mm socket, so we can get to the bottom one. So it's just a case of taking out the holder, retaining bolt in the top here of each one, and we can access the spark plugs which are in the cylinder head. We do one in turn. I don't want to mix these up, not that you really can because the leads aren't long enough to really mix them up, but we do one at a time and we'll reinstall it and then move on to the next one. Okay, so we'll start off, we'll remove this little cover here. Let's say it's 8mm. We'll take that off, that will give us access to the bottom. There we go. And then we're going to change over now to 10mm, so we can take the top coil off. So that's just a retaining bolt to hold the coil on in position. Just remove that. And now we'll just disconnect the connector and we'll pull the coil off. So that's your coil, ignition coil, which sits on top of the plug. And inside the hole sits the spark plug, which we'll remove now. And we've got the new one which we'll gap and reinstall, and then basically do the reverse of the removal. We'll put the coil on, the clip and the screw. So we'll just reach in there and remove the spark plug. Just started it off there, and we'll just take it out by hand now. There we go, these are NGKR ZFR 6K9E spark plugs. Very light usage on these ones, no blackening, no carbon buildup. I think probably about 10 hours on them or something like that. But we'll gap the new ones and reinstall them. So the correct gap for these spark plugs is 0.8 to 0.9. You just gap them using the feeler gauges. These are set to 0.8, and the ones that have come out, I've checked them, they're 0.8 as well. Engine's running fine, so we'll put them back in at 0.8. So we'll refit them now. Just put the spark plug in, put it into the hole. We'll start off by hand, just not to cross thread it. Now that it's in, we'll put the socket on and we'll nip it right up. There we go. Now we'll fit the coil back on. Hear a firm click. Back to the 10mm. Fit the retaining bolt back in. And then we shall click the connector. That's number 1 done. Now, I'm not going to show you 1, 2, 3 and 4 because it's exactly the same as number 1, but that's how you change a spark plug on this engine. So there we go, that concludes the spark plugs. You see the cover's been refitted on the side there. So all the cylinders have been done, it's all clipped back on, all secured. There's the old ones there removed. So not too hard of a job. Spark plug tool, 10 and an 8mm socket with a long reach, and you can do it yourself. So we're going to do the thermostats now on this Honda 100. You've got 2 thermostats. You've got one here, both M10, and one here, M10 as well. So we'll remove them, and I believe there could be different temperatures, so it's important not to get them mixed up. So we'll do the left one first, take it out, have a look at it, and we'll change the gasket as well. So there we go, I'll just take the cover off there, and that's the thermostat there. And it's just a case of just popping them out with your fingers and inspecting them. Obviously you can test them in hot water, but this one is not in a real good condition, and the owner hasn't indicated any faults with it. So at the moment we're not going to test it just this second. But that just shows you how easy it is to get your thermostats out. Obviously for installation it goes back in. Got a cover and an O-ring that sits in there, which we'll change, and then we'll do the same for this top one. And again there, I've just taken the top one off, and just in case of just pulling it out there and checking it. Obviously check out the video of how to test a thermostat in my other videos. That goes into detail of how to test one. And then just a case of changing the gasket, refitting it, and putting the cover back on. So we're going to do the gearbox now, the impeller. So I've trimmed the engine up, got a socket on there which is 27mm. I've taken the cotter pin out already, and we're just going to brace it with some wood in there, and then we can just crack this nut off. There we go, then we can remove the propeller, just makes life a little bit easier, and then we'll drop this lower unit off and change the impeller. So we'll just take the castellated nut off. And then lift the prop clean off, and then we'll put the nut back on just to protect the threads on the end. Put the prop to one side. And now we can get to these bolts, 2 here and 2 on the other side, and we should be able to lower the lower unit off to get to the impeller. So now we've got the engine trimmed up and level. I'm just going to take this Allen key head off this bolt to reveal a hidden bolt in there. And we'll remove this one first. There's 2 on each side. This one, there's the one on the top which does the trim tab. Now, I'm not sure whether that has anything to do with holding the lower unit on. I don't think it is. So we'll take out the 5 bolts, and we should be able to withdraw the gearbox. So M14 on here. Just get the second one out first. Put it on the extension for better grip. There you go, that's the centre one out. Now we'll do, got that centre M14. Now we've got 2 on each side. We'll remove them and the lower unit should pull out. It's a spline shifter, so there's no linkages to remove. That's the top one there I was on about. It's a rubber bung bolt there. It's outside the case and this is for the joint, and I believe that's just for the trim tab, so we're not gonna touch that one. So we'll do the 4 bolts on the sides. That should be the lower unit coming out. So we'll just slacken each one off, just so we know they're going to come out. Number 3, and there's number 4. So now we'll take 2 of these out on this side, and then we'll do the other side. And what I like to do is when I do the last one, you always just leave a bit of a thread on with it exposed so we can knock it back the lower unit just to see there's no open out, just to see if it is drawn out. So it's a bit tedious taking these bolts out. Quite a fine thread on them, but they're not too bad. Just not much access for your fingers. I'll just show you what I mean. So we've taken this one out, just withdrawn this one, and then we've got the exact same on the other side to do. All the bolts are the same size as well. So we're going to leave the top one, which is here, for last. Which just makes it easier. So as you can see there, I gave it a tap and the joint is growing all the way around. We should be good to go. And that joint's opened up really well now. See daylight through it. So we know we've got all the bolts. It's just this last one. Just going to put a spanner. Right, so there we go, that's the last bolt out. Now it's just a case of withdrawing this in one movement. And there we go, there's the lower unit removed. We'll just prop this up somewhere. So there we go, nice and easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts. There's the shaft scope there, and there it is, removed. I'm just laying it down for now. And there's the impeller housing, which we're going to change now. So there it is, there's the lower unit in the bench. 4 bolts to remove, M12s, and the housing will slide up and off, and I've got the new impeller gaskets to put in. So the first job is we'll take all 4 of these bolts off. I believe they're all the same size, but we'll whiz them out and then I'll show you what we're dealing with after that. So that's all 4 bolts out, and now we can just lift off. That's the cover. The impeller cup, which has the impeller in it, which we'll lay out here so we know which way they came out. We've got the wear plate, there's a key, it's the drive key that drives the impeller, some spline, some dowels for locating. There's a few gaskets underneath, so we'll take them out as well, and then we'll see what we've got in the kit. So just looking at the old impeller, and there doesn't appear to be any sort of substantial wear on it at all. It looks pretty much brand new apart from the deformation of the vanes. So yeah, that could have probably gone another year, but better be changed now than not at all. So no concern there with the old impeller. So that's the wear plate lifted off. Then we've got a gasket underneath, which we'll just pop up as well. Just pop it off those dowels. It comes off the shaft. There we go. And there's the sort of the intake underneath, nice and clean. There's no build-up of any sediment, salt on there at all. Small bit on the impeller there, but nothing to worry about. So the first thing in the kit is the gasket, which just goes straight over, and that aligns with the 2 dowels. That's perfect. So with the dowels it only goes on one way. Now on top of that we're going to put the wear plate, which again only goes on one way. So here we go, here's the wear plate. These are all genuine Honda parts. That sits on there. So now the impeller rides on this plate. So the next thing to do, we've got the impeller and the wear key. Sorry, not the wear key. The impeller and the woodruff key, which sits in that flat recess. That's the shaft grips the impeller and drives it. Otherwise, it'll just spin. The drive shaft would spin, the impeller would sit still. So it's very imperative that this part locates with the impeller. It's got the new impeller here and the key in my hand. As you can see, the impeller only going in one way because there's a notch cut out on that face there, just at the top, 12 o'clock position, and underneath there isn't. So if you put it in sort of this side going down, we wouldn't be able to slip the woodruff key in. So put it in with that notch open, and that's where it'll sit. And then we'll put the key in. See if I can do this one-handed. Just check whether, so it's there, the key's in, the impeller comes down. See if we can just align this one-handed. There we go. A quick little test there. You see the impeller's now locked to the shaft. Never reuse the old ones. I mean, that's a substantial key. Probably wouldn't fail. But some of them are little cams, little pins that they do wear out, become deformed, and the impeller can slip. So it's always good to use brand new when you can. We've got the impeller housing, which is original. The new impeller cup and O-ring. So the first thing is to remove the old ring out of that recess, and we'll fit the new one. Then we'll pop the cup in. But pretty self-explanatory. You have to undo this all to remove it. So putting it back together, it's just the reverse of that. So that's the new O-ring in. Now for the cup will only go in one way. If you try and put it in the wrong way, it doesn't sit properly. So that like turned down edge sits in there, and there's two little locking tabs that lock it in position. And now we will slip this down the shaft and push it onto and over the impeller. So just before I do that, I always spray a bit of lubricating spray in. Now I know people will say that's the wrong way of doing it, you don't push it over the top, but it's how I've always done it, and I've never had a failed impeller. If it was an old impeller, then yeah, make sure it's in the right orientation, but I've never had an issue. Just a firm push over the top, just like that, and that's it done. Now the 4 bolts go in and complete. That's how we do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bit of grease on the bolts so they don't bind up again, and that's it. That's the impeller replacement. Obviously then we've got to put it back into the engine, and I'll film that as well. Okay, we're going to go for the reinstallation now. I'll put a bit of grease on the drive shaft, and just a case of offering it up, making sure that the spline goes into the shifter. Into the water pickup tube. There's a few little dowels to locate as well. And that's it in. Bolts to hand. We should put one in first, just to secure it. There we go, as you can see, it's one bolt in. Just got the other 4 to do now. That's the lower unit secured back on. So I'll do that off camera because there's no point me showing you, but remember it's just 1, 2, same on the other side, and we've got 1 in there as well. That one you don't have to touch, that's just for the trim tab, which is already aligned, and then we've got to put the prop back on. So we have it, that's the lower unit back on, the impeller's been changed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts refitted. So I'm just going to do the gearbox oil now. As always, remove your top plug before your bottom plug, or else you'll never get the oil back in. So I've just tested them, they're both slack. So we'll lower this down over the oil drain there, and then we'll lower the plugs out and drain the oil away. we'll just take that bottom plug out. Must be nice and clean, that oil. See, it's not flowing too quick there. So I'll take this top plug out. At the moment it's a partial vacuum. So as soon as we take this one out, there we go, a nice flow of oil. There should be 2 little O-rings as well, which will change while that's draining out. What we're looking for with the oil colour is just emulsification, which we haven't got any of. Or if you were getting particulates, but the oil looks perfect. So I'm probably not even going to bother with a pressure test looking at the condition of that. I mean, the engine's not been run that much at all, and the seals look fine. Pretty new engine. And the pressure test would just test PSI, vacuum and pressure. If we were getting issues, I would definitely do one, but with this one I don't think we're going to bother this time. So just in case, so we'll let that drain out. I'll put some new O-rings, clean them up, and then we'll fill with new oil. Okay, so the last step now is just to do the gear oil. It's pretty much all drained out now, so we're just going to offer up the fitting here. Screw that in. I think I might just move this oil a little bit out, trim the engine up, just to be able to get it in. It's a little bit tricky. There we go. So I'm just threading it on there. I don't know if you can see that, but just threading that on. So we'll move this oil out of the way, and we can trim the engine back down. Okay, so we'll pump that up now until we get oil coming out this top like breather, and then we know it's full. I think it holds about 1 litre, so I'll pump this bottle and then we'll switch back and I'll show you putting the plugs back in. Now while I was waiting for that to drain, there was a spin-on fuel filter that's on the transom of the boat. It's one of the water separator ones. It's quite old, a bit rusty, so we swapped that out as well, but that's just a spin-on can. I have got another video showing how to do that on another boat. I think it's one with an Evinrude, but a universal filter. It's not specific to the engine. There we go, there's the oil coming out the top there. So what we'll do now is we'll put the top plug in, remove this bottom, and then put the bottom one in. The top one creating like a partial vacuum. So it's as simple as that. There you go, I'll just put the top one in there. We'll just take out this bottom one much the same way, and then quickly put the bottom plug in. Try not to lose too much oil. And we'll just nip that up. I'll trim the engine up and then I'll nip that, and that concludes the gearbox oil change.